Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, 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 good.
Good. Thank you so much for joining us and taking time out to join us. I had a lot of people that wanted to hear more about the financial world as it relates to law. So I'm really happy that you are, willing to do this.
Good. I'm glad. No, yeah, so I'm excited for this conversation.
We are talking about banking and finance today, and I'm joined by Nicole, who is an associate at White and Case, in particular in the debt finance team. So, Nicole, if you don't mind, kind of just give us a brief overview and background to your legal journey, and then we'll go into each thing in a little bit more detail as time goes on.
Yeah, sure. So I'm working in the debt finance team at White and Case. I'm currently just over 2 years qualified. And then prior to joining White and Case, I worked at Reed Smith, which is another law firm, US law firm, and I worked in the banking and finance team there. That's also where I trained, so I did my training contract there as well before leaving. So yeah, I'm fairly new at White and Case. I only joined in October, the beginning of October. So yeah, it still feels quite early for me. But so far so good.
Good. So you're settling in well. I feel like it's always like a massive thing moving from one firm to the next because you're having to kind of adapt to a whole new culture. How are you
Yeah,
finding it?
it is. So don't get me wrong, this is the first time that I've moved.
Okay.
So it was weird actually, to be fair. And you're kind of like, you feel like you need to kind of impress all over again and kind of like
Improve. Yeah.
show people, oh yeah, this is the reason why you hired me. And like, yeah, so it is I won't lie and say that it's not a lot of pressure at the start. But at the same time, I think that's why it's important to, like, in the like interview process and stuff, to try and make two-way street. So like, you're asking the people that you're interacting with in your interview about like what the culture's like and what kind of things they look for in their associates and stuff. And you can kind of get a feel if you actually get along with the people that are interviewing you.
Mhm.
But I had 4 interviews, 4 different rounds.
Oh,
So
wow.
definitely more than enough time for me to realize, like, are these people that I work with? So
Oh
yeah.
my gosh. I didn't even know that there was that many interviews, especially when you feel like it's more of a lateral recruitment as opposed to, working your way up from like, university to get in a position in a law firm. It's funny that you then still have so many different interview stages just to cross over into another department, into the same department, but in another firm. So
Yeah.
well
I
done.
mean, hiring is expensive. So I guess for them, they're just like, well, let's make sure that we get this right. Because once they hire me, that it's pretty hard to kind of get me out.
Okay, so let's kind of take it back a little bit. Could you kind of give us an overview of the journey? But I think there's so many different parts of your journey that I know a lot of people will kind of want some insight into. So, obviously, during our conversation and during my own little research, I noticed that you got a number of internships before you even started university. And
Yeah.
since kind of being on this platform and going through my own journey, I know that for a lot of people, it is really hard to kind of get some type of foot in the door, trying to get to know law firms on a more personal basis and get that exposure. So,
Yeah.
how was it that you kind of navigated that and was able to get internships before you'd even studied law?
Um, so yeah, because I think so in at college, I went to Woodhouse College, and at college, and that was actually quite good for me because then I realized quite early on that I ultimately wanted to be a lawyer. And so I kind of just researched like loads of different like schemes and stuff that I could join that would enable me to get the necessary work experience that I needed.
Okay.
Because a lot of people that I had spoken to had said that actually like work experience is one of the most important things when it,
Mhm.
especially like, you need to build up your legal work experience to be able to get a job. I mean, that's like in most industries, like you need to be able to show that you have good work experience. So yeah, so I joined quite a few different schemes. Like I joined like the social mobility scheme. I joined Black Lawyers Directory. Like there's so many different schemes that exist, and literally like their ultimate aim is just trying to help people who are interested in attaining a career in law to actually get the necessary experience. And so those helped me a lot because then it put me into contact with people that actually worked in the legal industry. And then they were able to then kind of recommend, oh, okay, like I have this work experience week coming up, which you can come in for, or like I have this vacation scheme that you could join, etc. So like, yeah, So that's definitely what I would say. But I do definitely think that you can't underestimate the importance of like work experience, and it helped me a lot in my applications, because similar to you, like a lot of the interviews that I had were with people saying, oh, like you've had so much work experience, like this is really good, blah, blah, blah. So like it definitely does help to set you apart if you don't necessarily want to do corporate law. So I still did work experience at a criminal barristers chambers and in law barristers chambers as well. And I think it's good to like try out different types of law to understand what it is that you want. Because it wasn't until I did my criminal law experience that I realized that like criminal law is not for me. I can't do criminal law at all.
No, literally, and I couldn't agree more. I think before I even settled on corporate commercial law, like you said, I also did criminal law work experience with barristers and solicitors and employment law work experience and a bit of media and entertainment. And I think even though for some people they may think, okay, that looks like you're a bit scattered, a bit all over the place, you're not kind of sure what you want. I think once you do have that experience, it's then easier to sell in an interview while you're so sure that this area is now what you want. So I think that's great.
Yeah, exactly. Because like I still remember to this day, like on one of my vacation scheme interviews, they specifically asked me, they were like, why do you think that you want to do like corporate commercial law? Why not another type of law? And like you have a much stronger answer if you can say, well, I've tried all these other types of law, and for this and this reason, this is why I want to do corporate commercial law. Because I think that, you know, most law firms as well think that most people just want to go into corporate law just for like the money and stuff. And,
yeah.
Oh yeah, you just want to like, but do you actually want to do this on a day-to-day? And it's actually important because on a day-to-day, when you're working, as I'm sure you can imagine, when you're working really long hours, you need to actually like what type of law you're doing.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so in terms of the internships you were able to find, obviously you kind of said that you kind of networked and kind of got involved with other different organizations. Was that something you just Googled, or was that something that your college helped you with? Kind of, how did you find it?
Yeah, so it's a mixture of both. So like my college helped with like recommending some stuff. And it was like looking online, word of mouth as well. So like speaking to other people that I know wanted to get into, like we're kind of like on the same journey as me. And then we kind of share like, oh, okay, well, there's this thing coming up that you could apply for, blah, blah, blah. I think that nowadays, like, obviously, like we have social media at our disposal. Most law firms, if not all law firms, have a dedicated Instagram page. They have a dedicated LinkedIn page, like, and they literally like they have someone in their firm that is their sole purpose is like to advertise some of the stuff that they have coming up. So I definitely think it's a lot easier now to kind of keep like to be made aware of some of these things. So if it was me now, rather than like me in like 2012 or whatever, when I was doing my applications, I would just like follow all the Instagram pages, follow all of the LinkedIn pages for the different firms, and then just like apply as much as possible to anything that I think comes up that is like for my for your particular position, like depending on if you've graduated or not.
Absolutely. And I think that's such a massive point, because when I was in university, I had heard obviously you need to apply for training contracts, you need to apply for vacation schemes, but I'd never heard of like first year schemes and things like that. So I feel like for my first and second year, I was just like, okay, let me just build on, you know, all the other transferable skills that I can get. And I didn't do as much networking with law firms. And so I think making those kind of connections in that you're following these pages, you're keeping up to date with what law firms are doing, are a great way to kind of understand what is available for you. So yeah, completely agree. And okay, so you've done your internships, and then obviously off the back of that, I guess it really helped you when it came to applying for vacation schemes.
Yeah, basically, like it's so weird. Have like some experience, then that means that it helps like further on. So like one of the things that I did, like I had like 1 week work experience at college at Taylor Wessing, which is like a UK law firm. And I so then afterwards, when I then was applying for vacation schemes, then I obviously applied back to Taylor Wessing, and then I let them know like on my application and also in the actual interview that I had like done a 1 week work experience there already. So then at the same time, it was a lot easier to like, I still remember in the interview when I told them I had the 1 week work experience, that's what they were focused on. They're just like, oh, like how did you find it? Who did you sit with? What did you do? Like, so yeah, so I think if you, as much experience as you can get before you even get to the stage of vacation schemes will help you a lot.
I completely agree. And I think that also goes when it comes to things like law fairs and open days. Any interaction you have with a firm is a great thing for you to put in your application form, and a great thing for you to do before you do application form. Because if you can say, oh, I spoke to this person at the firm, or I learned this information about the firm that's not like the headline on their website that everyone knows about, it's a great way for them to start seeing that you have a passion in that firm in particular. So yeah, I think that's important. Would you say that there was anything else in your applications for vacation schemes that really allowed you to stand out? Because let's not downplay it. You had 5 vacation schemes. It's like, I have never heard anyone who's had so many.
Yeah, I mean that was over the course of like 2 years. But yeah, so I think I think also like what I did do as well is that like after most applications that I did, I also made sure I knew who the graduate recruitment team are, because basically the way it works is you submit your application to the graduate recruitment team and then they kind of sift out applications before then you get progressed to like the next stage. So what I did do is that like I made sure that I knew who the graduate recruitment teams were, so that when it me actually like submitting my application, I could then send them an email to say, oh, like hi, like I just sent in my application. Obviously that is that would then require you to have actually built up some kind of rapport with the graduate team as well, so that it's not like just a random email, but it's like kind of a continuation of like a relationship that you already have. So just be like, FYI, like I've also submitted an application as well. So hopefully that also is like a red flag to them, to let them know that like someone that they actually like and that they've been keeping track of is applying. Because yeah, with most graduate recruitment teams, like their main role is like trying to make sure that they get good talent. And so if you can make their life easier by saying, oh, like, you know, I've already met you, like we had a good conversation, and then now I'm in the application, then that makes their day job a lot easier. So
absolutely. Sorry, I'm like agreeing with everything right now. I feel like that's something that I learned last year. I think when you kind of consider how competitive the industry is, and the fact that until these people meet you, you are just a name on an application form. Any way in which you can differentiate yourself is so important. And if you see them at an event and then you send them an email and then you submit your application form and then you continue on that email chain to be like, oh, I've just submitted my application form, they can now put a face or a background to the application that they've just received. So agreed. I think someone just answered a question, and I think most questions we'll do at the end, but I think because it's quite topical what we're talking about right now, we'll kind of talk about it now. And that is, are you ever worried the firms might judge your personal IG page? I think it's a great question.
No, like on my page. No, I don't think so. Like I think so what I do is my page is not my name, so you can't like search my name on Instagram and find my page. My page also typically is like private, so I mean, it's not private now anymore, but it was private. I mean, this is the thing. I feel like I've got to a stage now as well where I'm not actually making applications, so I don't really like it doesn't really matter as much. But no, I agree with you. I think you should be like aware of it. I don't think you should necessarily have your name on your Instagram page, like your full name. And also, I you should necessarily have it like public if there's stuff on there that you don't want, like you actually care about other people seeing. Also, it's important to Google yourself. I don't know if people do that, but like it is actually really important to Google yourself. With myself a lot, I'm happy with what comes up when you actually Google me. Everything is actually quite legal related. Everything is related in terms of like what comes up first. But if you do Google yourself and you see that stuff comes up that you're not actually really happy with, then that's stuff you kind of like try and address early on.
Yeah, no, I think that's so important, because I did a post recently about that, and I think it's slightly naive. No, I think it's naive to think that with all these applicants that sometimes graduate recruitment would just Google people to kind of get a vibe from them, because people like people. And I think if you Google yourself, like you said, you can kind of see what comes up. Like I had a friend that I worked with like 5 years ago, and she Googled herself, and the first thing that came up was her drunk at a club one time. And I was thinking, and obviously she'd been tagged on Facebook or something, and I was just like, okay, this is bad PR. So Yeah, and I think what is important to have is, I think having a professional LinkedIn page is really important. I think
Yeah,
if you want to be free on your social media accounts, then yes, it is best to private them. Like my personal Instagram page is private because I want to live my life.
yeah,
But I think one thing that I think we touched on, I think this is when this question came up, was when we were talking about obviously connecting with firms on LinkedIn. And so
yeah,
because you're connecting with firms, obviously you want to interact with them. So they will see your page as well. In all honesty, I think if you're going to connect with firms on Instagram, I personally would make a separate legal Instagram account. And I
yeah,
would do that for two reasons. I would do that so that everything that you have on your legal Instagram page is legal focused and you're happy for them to see any content you put on your legal Instagram page. But two, I feel like it keeps you focused. Because when I was doing the application season last year and I started to follow certain legal Instagram pages, I would go on Instagram thinking, oh yeah, I'm going to check what Taylor Weston are doing. I'm going to check what Linklaters are doing. And then I'd get consumed by Shade Room or one of the other social sites. And then I would be completely distracted. So I think definitely keep your social media accounts private if you're going to have things out there that, you know, recruiters may not want to see. But then set up a separate legal Instagram account if you want to actually interact with firms on Instagram. Personal
yeah.
opinion.
True. And to be fair, like it actually ties in with like most firms' policies. Like I think I'm pretty sure that, like I know at Reed Smith we definitely had a policy of like they actually said to us that your Instagram profile and stuff should just be private as much as you can.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it is important because obviously they know that like even when interacting with clients will connect with you on LinkedIn and then they might also Google you as well. And then well, I'm pretty sure that happens because I Google other
Pretty
lawyers.
sure.
So I will Google other lawyers. So it makes sense that like your client as well will most likely Google you. And so as their lawyer, it's not the greatest of looks if like they do that. And then like, yeah, there's loads of stuff on the on the internet that you're not actually happy with them seeing.
Literally, like a recruiter actually admitted it to me. So my first legal job after I finished university, I had an interview with an in-house legal team, and it
Yeah.
went really well. They gave me the job. My first day, they were like, "We Googled you, we couldn't find anything." I'm like, "Damn right, you could." Like,
Yeah.
that was intentional. But it just kind of allows you to control what's out there. So yeah, keep
Yeah.
it private if you can. Great tip. Okay. So internships, vacation schemes, great. So how is it that you found your training contract? Because obviously you spent time with a number of firms, you decided what firm you wanted to progress with. How was your training contract?
Yeah, it was good. So, okay, so this is the thing, right? It just depends on what you want in terms of like when you actually start out. So when I first started out, I said to myself, okay, like I decided that I wanted to go with Reed Smith because number one, they're actually known in the market as being like a very friendly firm and like having a very good culture. One of the firms that have a very, very good culture. So I wanted to be somewhere where, you know, like if I'm interacting with partners, especially or whatever, like I can actually ask questions and not feel scared or whatever to ask a question. I'm gonna, because this is the most important time in my career when I'm actually learning. So you want to be somewhere where you feel like you can actually ask questions and that you get on with the people that you're around. I like genuinely one of the most important things. And then also obviously like for me as well, I wanted to do at the time when I first started my training contract, I wanted to actually get into like more energy and natural resources, like the law concerning energy and natural resources. And research is very 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 big on energy and natural resources and especially in the emerging markets. And so that's why again I was very interested in Reed Smith at the time. Now my training contract did not go that way, as you can see, right into banking, literally general banking and finance. So like we work with like so many different types of borrowers and obviously like most of the main banks. So yeah, it didn't actually turn out that way. And I think it was because in my first year I did banking and finance, and then it was so fast paced. I don't know if people know, but yeah, so banking and finance law, like just even taking a step back, banking and finance law is basically means that like you're acting for either a borrower or a lender. Essentially you're drafting like loan documents, and obviously like the loan documents can be usually for a significant amount of money, and so maybe it might be that the company wants to buy like a property, or it might be that they want to buy like another company, or they want to make another investment, so they need like a loan from the bank, right? So this is just like really basic terms.
Yeah.
And then, so then my job obviously is to like act in the best interest of my client, review those documents, negotiate the points in the loan documents that's in their best interests. So that's basically like what banking and finance is. It was very, very fast paced as well. Like it's pace. Usually there's like some sort of deadline that the company's working towards. So it's like you have to like just literally go. And I remember so I remember my first year I was so scared because I was just like everything was so go. There wasn't much opportunity to like be like slow.
Downtime. Yeah.
Time to review stuff in detail. Like everything's like go trainee. Like you just need to pick up, like, you know, the client will just call you straight away and just ask you questions about the agreement and stuff, and that's fine. Like, and you know, in the moment I didn't like it because I was just like, oh my god, like I'm not even qualified yet, like I don't know if I can do this. And then afterwards, when I went to like my next seats after that and everything was like much slower, I was like, actually I think I really like the fast-paced nature of banking.
Okay.
I like the fact in general, I like the fact that you can act for like the bank or the borrower. I like the fact that like sometimes if you act for the borrower, you need to really get to know their business, because obviously like any restriction in the loan agreement needs to actually be viable for them, like on a day-to-day basis afterwards for their actual business. So it can't be too restrictive. Stuff like that, like I actually like. No, like generally my training contract was fine. It was a really, I genuinely love my training contract. I got to go abroad for 6 months. So
what are each of the seats that you did? So you did banking and finance first. What did you do next?
Then I went on secondment to Dubai. So I did I did everything there. But corporate, but I ended up doing like construction litigation, because in Dubai they do a lot of construction, and then therefore there's a lot of litigation in connection with that construction that they're doing. And then I did I came back and I did structured finance, which is basically like I don't know how to describe it. It's basically like documenting. So, you know, after a loan is entered into, then sometimes you can securitize it, which means that you're basically kind of like selling interest in the loan to other parties. That's like basic way of saying structured finance. So anyway, that it's very more complex type of finance that people do. So that's structured finance. And then the last seat I did was media and entertainment. So I did entertainment and media, which sounds very sexy. Yeah, like it was like it's actually the most popular seats like in our firm, because we have a very big entertainment and media practice.
Okay.
So that was like, I did a lot of like, I did some film financing stuff, so financing for films that were being done, and programs, and then also like working for like most big like tech companies as well, in terms of like advising them on any questions that they may have. So that was cool.
So your training contract was very finance heavy, despite the fact that originally you thought you wanted to go into energy and infrastructure. Was that like a conscious decision? Did you do banking and finance and say, yeah, finance, and we stick with that? Or was it just you weren't able to get it because of like seat options?
Yeah, it's a mixture of both. So like,
I
go on secondment to Dubai. So I was like, I want to go on secondment. So I went there, and then actually I got a little bit of a taste of like energy, natural resources, but not that much. But then I just missed the banking work as well. So what happened is that I just and I kept on doing banking and finance work, even though I was in another team. And then when I got to my 30, I was like, okay, I want to just see if I actually really like finance. So that's why I did structured finance, which is a bit more complex.
Yeah.
And I actually finance is for me. And then I was just, so what happens is that you kind of, it's really hard to tell like how your training contract is going to go at the start. You kind of go with the flow. Like, honestly, there's so many people in my intake that have like ended up in teams that they didn't necessarily think that they were going to end up in at the beginning. So it's you just like, that's the thing, like graduate recruitment always say to you at the beginning, like, oh, like just
keep an open mind. Yeah,
so important. It's so true, because like you don't know, like when I finished banking and finance, don't get me wrong, I hated it. I told you, like I literally had like palpitations. I was just like, why am I doing this? Like, cause it was like so like go, like literally be working. Like I did my first all-nighter when I was in banking and finance. Like I worked hard, but then I don't know, like it's nice as well when the deal closes and everyone's really happy.
Yeah.
And you're I really achieved something, like I've literally got them this, like, I don't know, millions or billions of a loan that they really, really needed. And so, yeah, so then
sense
that
of
is,
accomplishment, I guess.
yeah, you do 100%. You do have like a sense of accomplishment. So yeah,
I can't
think
lie, like I've got my training contract starting in March, and banking is the one area I don't want to touch. Like, I'm not.
like a lot of people have that view.
And it's so funny because when I had my interviews for my vacation, my training contract, all of the interviews I had were all banking partners. Like, I don't know how it worked out like that. And because I knew banking was like my weak spot, I made sure that like that was the area that I really prepped for my interview. So when I had the interview now, they thought that I was amazing. And I was like, no, I don't want to do this. Like, I'm just trying to pass the interview. And they're like, no, come be a trainee. And I was like, no.
As well, like that's another thing I would say, like when it comes to interviewing, like the way you don't necessarily go in and you're like, oh my god, like this is what I want to do, this is what I want to do, like I'm sorry, it doesn't make any sense. Like I went into my Reed Smith interview knowing that Reed Smith is rated band 1 in energy and natural resources, and I was like, I want energy and natural resources. It doesn't make any sense to go into like, yeah, it just wouldn't make any sense, for example, to go to a firm that doesn't really do entertainment and media law and start talking about the fact that you really are interested in entertainment and media law, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think you did the right thing in your interview to be like, yeah, like I'm interested in banking. But then when you actually start,
abort, literally.
Yeah, like, no, oh my god, so you only really spoke about this in your interviews. This is actually all you want to do. Like people are like, yeah, like just keep an open mind. Like things change. Women's like,
no,
banking,
I know.
So crazy.
I know. Okay, so obviously you have banking and finance is obviously a very broad area because obviously every company needs financing, but obviously you kind of mentioned that you do debt finance. So can you just kind of explain generally for everyone what debt finance is, and then we can kind of move on to the next.
So yeah, so debt finance is just basically loans, essentially, like i.e. like you're lending to a borrower, and in return that borrower needs to repay the loan with interest, essentially, i.e. usually there's no equity that is involved. The only real difference in terms of like the thing within debt finance is really broad, and actually within that there's loads of different like subgroups as well. So it just depends. Like, so for example, like I at Reed Smith was doing a lot more like funds finance, which means that like you're asking for like funds or you're lending to funds, and usually they need the money to be able to make an investment fund, because that's all funds do essentially. So they basically take money from their investors and they invest it for you.
Invest it in something else,
and back to their investors. But usually sometimes funds also need to get loans as well from the banks to be able to make those investments, pending receiving money from their investors, or maybe they don't even want to go to their investors before they have a particular investment in mind. So like it might be timing implications. They might decide, actually, like there's this really good investment that we want to make. We don't have time to go out to our investors and say, hey, like, can you all give us like £1 million or whatever each? So what they'll do is they'll say, Bank X, can you please give us the money? And then pending getting that money from the bank, then they don't need to go out to the investors. They can make the investment as they said that they wanted to and meet the deadline for that. So it just depends. And obviously then there's real estate finance. So if you're lending because they want to buy a property, that someone wants to buy a property, usually commercial property. So we've spoken about the different types, but like debt finance is really broad. So
did you do like any bond work, or is it just loans that you deal with?
So I literally did like one of my first bond deals last week at White & Case.
Oh, congrats.
I was literally just like, I don't think I want to do this. I don't think I want to. Launching a is so like, it's on a different level in terms of like how quick everything needs to move, and also there's like a deadline for like when the bond needs to launch on the markets and stuff. And so you literally have your client being like, this deadline cannot change. Like, we have to make this deadline. If you don't make this deadline, then it's like a really big issue. So I don't like it, because usually like there is a deadline, but the deadline can move. But this is a situation where like the deadline cannot move. But yeah, it was a high yield bond that they launched on, I think, the New York Stock Exchange, and they were obtaining with that. So yeah.
I find bonds so complicated. Like I said, when I was preparing for my interview, I was like, okay, equity versus debt finance, I need to understand the difference. Then when I got into my interview, because I knew a lot about loans, I was like, okay, cool, let's go. the mentor was like, okay, you know enough about loans. Let's talk about bonds. I was like, no, I don't know anything. And he literally laughed and was like, it's fine. We'll just see how far we can go. And I was like, I hate bonds. But
Yeah.
there you go. Congrats on doing your first one.
No, thanks. I don't want to do another one, but fine.
Oh gosh. Okay. How, in terms of the day-to-day work that you do you feel like there was a massive jump between working in banking and finance as a trainee as opposed to working in banking and finance as an associate? How did you find? Was there a massive distinction, or were you doing more of the same thing?
Oh yeah, no, there's a huge distinction. Like, I think that as a trainee, you are, well, it depends. Like, you are very much like, obviously being the most junior person usually on the deal means that like you're doing a lot more of like the legwork in terms of like maybe the more simple documents that need to be done. You're collating all of the information about the company that the bank says that they need. Something literally it's as basic as, oh, I need to get like these articles of association for the company, I need to get their incorporation certificate, blah blah blah. In the UK you can download those online from Companies House. So like stuff like that, like as a trainee, like that might be your task, that you need to actually download those, you need to make sure that they're correct, whatever. And then as an usually like the associate, like myself as a junior associate, and if there's a senior associate or a partner, will be tasked with actually drafting or getting involved in negotiation of like the actual loan agreement itself, which is a very long document. And obviously that's where like all of the restrictions are, all the permissions are. So like that can go back and forth a lot between the two sides, i.e. the borrower side and side. So as an associate, that's what you're tasked with. Like you're tasked also with like kind of like running the deal and doing a lot more of like telling the trainee what to do.
A lot of delegation and like overseeing type work.
Yeah, I honestly think that like being a partner is like a good sweet spot sometimes, because like you kind of just tell everyone, listen, we need to do this, we need to do this. You might jump on the call with your client and obviously like you take the hit if anything goes wrong. So ultimately the partner is like in charge. They take the hit if anything goes wrong. They're the ones that actually need to check everything and make sure everything is okay.
Yeah.
But associates kind of have to do the heavy lifting in terms of the drafting, in terms of like just liaising with the other side, making sure that we actually are moving forward in terms of everything that needs to be. And then the trainee, like I would say that their task is really just to like follow instructions correctly and get the task that they have been set done, but always knowing that a trainee is not qualified. They're not a qualified lawyer. So everything that the trainee does should really be checked. Like they're not going to, you don't go off as a trainee and just do your own thing because you're not qualified. So like you have a bit of protection there, because everyone on the deal knows that you're not a qualified person. So like they know that there's only,
and that your experience is limited as well. Like this is just like a 6 months space in your training contract. Yeah.
Exactly. So like even when I got called as a trainee about stuff, like okay, fine. Like sometimes it could be someone that was calling me, and if I didn't know the answer, I would just say like I don't know. I need to double check that point. And I'm not saying that you can't say that as an associate, but at the same time, as an associate, you probably have to like try and figure out what the answer is.
They definitely expect more from you, obviously.
Yeah, 100%. And that is good, because the whole point is that you're meant to be progressing. You're meant to be able to like hopefully get to a stage of a partner where you just know this stuff like off the back of your heart.
Yeah.
I literally join calls with partners and like they don't know anything about what's going on the deal, and then all of a sudden like they get on the call with the client and they just know it. Like the client could ask them anything and they'll just know everything off the top of their head. So like yeah, I mean that's the goal, right, to get to that stage. That's where they get paid the big money.
Of course. Okay, so obviously banking and finance is something you've done at 2 different firms, but you've been at a range of different firms throughout your journey, and obviously with Reed Smith and White and Case are both international and then US firms. What would you say you liked about that international aspect, and why did you kind of go for it? Because obviously you have been at more national firms as well.
I think it just makes the work more interesting. Like so most of the deals it makes it also a lot easier. I'm not joking with you, because like most of the deals that I'm on have some sort of nexus to another jurisdiction, i.e. I can't even remember the last time I was on a deal where it was literally just the UK. Usually most companies will like have some sort of vehicle or something in another country, usually for tax reasons, that want that they want to be included in the structure for the loan, i.e. they want the loan to go into that. Maybe it benefits them from a tax perspective. Maybe this entity in their group structure is the one that actually holds all of the assets, which the bank is like focused on. So so there's always some sort of, in this day and age, there's always some sort of connection to like a jurisdiction outside of the UK. So working in an international law firm is a lot easier because on a day, I was going to say it's a lot easier because on a day-to-day I can just ask the other offices for my questions. Like honestly, it's so much more easy. Email people in Germany, people in New York, people like in whatever jurisdiction it is. Like I'm working until now where it's like I'm emailing someone in Germany, I'm emailing someone in the New York office and ask them to like review a particular provision or like double check something. And it's a lot easier to do that rather than having to like formally instruct them, which takes time.
Yeah.
So there's that.
Yeah.
And also just from a practical perspective, so if I was thinking as a trainee, being in an international law firm has also meant that like I have a better understanding in terms of like what is going on as well in those other jurisdictions.
Other markets. Yeah.
And I think that's good. And then also, you know, I was able to go on secondment internationally. So I wouldn't have been able to do that if my firm did not have an office internationally.
Yeah.
So like I want to be able to work internationally, and so therefore like joining a firm that's able to do that makes a lot more sense. So yeah, and actually like because one of the reasons why I joined White Case because they do a lot of work in Africa as well. They do a lot of work in our debt finance team with Ghana in particular. So that all of these things are like stuff that it just makes more sense for me because it's stuff that I'm genuinely like interested in
and passionate about. Yeah.
Can relate to it. Like there's only so much I can relate to everything being in the UK.
Okay, so with banking and finance, would you say that you work with a number of different teams within the firm, or would you say that banking and finance tend to just get their own work and then just deal in isolation from other departments?
So usually they get their own work. It's a mixture of both, to be honest. Like sometimes it can actually come from another partner in another team. So like, for example, in the corporate team or private equity team, for example. So it can come from other people. And then there hasn't really been much instances where, especially now at White & Case, where I've not had to interact with other teams. So just for perspective, so for example, I'm working on a loan. It's a venture capital loan. So it's a loan to a startup. They have IP. IP is really important for like startups, obviously. Like they have a lot of IP, they have some real estate. And so therefore the documents will talk about the fact that the bank wants to take security over that IP. They want to take security over the real estate. And so therefore I need to speak to like the real estate team on that. I need to speak to the IP team on that just to double check that like this is like fine. Even like I had a question today about trademarks registers. I was just like, I don't know what needs to be done to update the trademarks register. So like I had to speak to the IP team about that. So very rare that you will have a deal where you don't need to speak to anyone else, like any other team. And so yeah, I guess that makes stuff a bit more interesting because like and tax as well. Tax is really
tax is massive.
A lot. And the world of tax law, is so complex. I'm just like, it's so complex. Honestly. But yeah, so speaking to tax lawyers to actually break down to me like what the implications are of certain provisions regarding tax and what this means for our client is really useful. So I think there is definitely a lot of interaction in finance with the other.
Yeah, of course. And especially because, like you said, you'll be dealing with a company who has maybe offices or parts of the company in different countries. And so kind of navigating the tax implications of all the different countries, complicated and long. Okay, we have a question that's come in. And the question is, do you have any advice, a little bit off this topic, but obviously something we discussed a little bit earlier, do you have any advice for anyone who secured their first paralegal role?
As in, I guess the question is like how to turn it into a training contract, right?
Maybe. Yeah. I guess so, because I guess that's the ultimate goal, right?
I mean, okay. I think number one, it's important to just like remember that like even being a paralegal is still it's still like an opportunity for you to learn. So I don't think anyone in your team that you're joining is going into it thinking that you need to know everything. That's the whole point. Like, you're a paralegal, you're there to actually still kind of learn. You're the most you are definitely the most junior person on that particular team. So it shouldn't be like you should just be able to say, like, I've not done this before. Can you please like let me know what I need to do, etc. I think that's important, because sometimes you can kind of come in and act like they know what they're doing, and then they don't know what they're doing. And then it's like, but actually genuinely would have made my life easier if you had told me
if you just said you didn't know.
explain this to you, and then therefore you wouldn't have gone away and spent the whole day and then literally sent me like rubbish. I think it's important to like be honest about like the extent to which you know something and which you don't know something. And then also I think it's important to just be like as keen as possible. Like, you know, at Reed Smith there were actually quite a few paralegals in my team that actually went on to be given training contracts, and that's because the partners actually were just like, no, you're good enough, you've been in our team for 1 year or 2 years, you've literally done like so much hard work, you deserve a training contract. Like, why are we giving contracts to people that we don't even know over someone that has been in our team for like a year and proven themselves? So like, I think it's all about it's all about like your attitude, and that's what a lot of the partners talk about, is like your attitude. Like, are you keen? If someone says to you at 5 o'clock, hey, like, we've got this deal that needs to close tomorrow, and there's still so much work to be done at 5 o'clock, so it means that we're going to have to work through the night to get it done. Are you going to be able to get it done?
Are you going to chip in?
It's actually very important, like, for you to be able to do that. You don't just log off at 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. and be like, oh, I'm done. Loads of people say actually that as a corporate lawyer, you don't actually have a 9 to 5. You don't. Don't. As a paralegal, I think it's important to like get into that mind frame as well. From a
no, I definitely agree. I think if you're paralegal and you actually do want to qualify as a lawyer, then you have to start adapting to what it's really going to mean to be a trainee. And sometimes that does mean putting in the extra hours. It does mean networking and getting to know the team and the rest of the firm. I even did a post about this recently where I gave like just 3 general tips. And I think for me, definitely stay focused, because I think when you're a paralegal, you can get so consumed with like the work you're doing and the team, and like kind of forget your end goal of wanting to qualify. So you stop networking, you stop building your commercial awareness generally, you stop going to events, you stop doing application forms, because all you're doing now is focusing on the matter that you're dealing with in this team and not what your long-term goal is. So I think that's so important. And then also to just make sure that you know more about the firm than your team. And I think, to be fair, that's the massive mistake that I took away from one firm that I worked at. I was acing it in the department, I was recommended and all of that, but when it came to the training contract application form, I couldn't tell you much about the firm generally. I could just tell you everything about that department. And so I think it's really important that you kind of are able to have a broad overview and knowledge about the firm that it is you actually want to train in. I think that's so important.
And like once you're in, you're in. Like, it's so like it genuinely becomes so much more easier to actually understand what it is that you need to like do, as in what it is that the firm is doing, what their goals are. Usually like on an basis, like most firms have some form of like firm-wide update where they'll even go as far as their financials and what they're projecting for like the upcoming years. So joining those obviously makes sense, because then in your interview you can talk about the fact that you know what direction the firm is headed in. Everyone has their own and then actually it's a very good point what you said about like just making like building like more of like your own brand within the firm, and like
absolutely
getting involved in other stuff that isn't just like your day-to-day work, right? So when I was at Reed Smith, I led the Black and minority ethnic network. I did that literally when I was a trainee, and it helped like so much in terms of like finding out about what, you know, just speaking to like more senior people in the firm, because engaged with them, trying to lead this network. And then like so just trying to build like more of an internal brand as well, that can't be underestimated. And then and then it then meant that the paralegals that were also involved in that with me, that were helping like on the network, it helped a lot, because then I helped them a lot, because I would always like give them good reviews to like their supervisors and stuff like that. So I think that's really important.
Okay, there's another question. Hi Nicole, thank you for sharing your knowledge this evening. You mentioned securing 5 VAC schemes. I'm attempting to apply for VAC schemes again as a graduate. I always have a mental block when I see the application questions. Yeah. How do you structure and perfect your application answers?
Yeah, I mean, that is like the biggest hurdle, is like those questions. Number one is that you need to give yourself enough time. Like, you really need to give yourself enough time. Like, there's so many people that will literally approach those questions that maybe like a week or so before the deadline, and I would not recommend that at all. I think that you should try and get to grips as much as you can. Like, download the application now and try and get to grips with like what those questions actually require from you, and then like do bullet points for each question in terms of like, because everything is about structure as well, and because you obviously usually the word count is very limited, so you need to structure your responses quite well. So I would say that like doing like some like 1 or 2 or 3 bullet points for each like answer in terms of the points that you're going to cover is really important. And then I guess it goes back to the point that we were talking about in terms of like why you should be making contact with people at the firms, because if you have any questions about the questions, I'm not saying that you should go to someone and say, oh
What
my
was
God,
your answer?
yeah, people have asked me that, and what was your answer? And I'm just like, that was so long ago, I genuinely don't have it anymore. And the questions usually change. But at least if you do have like particular questions that you just wanted to like kind of, or you just wanted them to like review like your response just to see if they thought it was like going along the right lines, then you could get that done by someone that actually works at the firm that can kind of like have a better idea of like what graduate recruitment are expecting. Because yeah, I did that because like even when graduate recruitment, when I was at Smith, I got involved a lot in like reviewing the application questions from a diverse perspective, trying to, because they like, we have this question, what do you think, like do you think it's too restrictive in terms, like from a diversity perspective? Do you think we're like kind of making people, we're kind of like singling out certain people that wouldn't be able to answer this question, stuff like that. Test it on people as well to be like, would you actually pass this test? So I think it, to speak to people at the firm just to try and see if they have any inside info as well.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think speaking to people generally about application processes is great, but I think the best people to speak to are people who've been through the process at the law firm that you are actively trying to apply to at that point in time, because like you said, they know what the firm are looking for, they know what graduate recruitment looking for, they know how they were successful. I think that's really important. And I think, as you said, if you download the application from now and have a think, you can then use the application questions to also tailor what you focus on in your research about the firm and what you focus on when it comes to your commercial awareness and stuff like that. So I think that is very true.
Wait, though, when you do speak, if you do speak to people that have gone through the process, like it just makes more sense to speak to someone that's like more junior, i.e., like a trainee.
Yeah.
Rather than like, there's no point asking a partner what they did, because they'll just be like, I could not tell you. They genuinely.
No, definitely.
Yeah.
I think the best people to speak to are people who are future trainees, because they would have just gone through. So it's less likely that the application questions would have changed or things would have changed. Whereas if you ask even an associate, it's like, come on, like we've moved past that a while ago.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that was great. Is there any advice generally that you would give to any aspiring sisters that are watching, either in terms of training or qualifying or your legal journey in general?
I think, okay, so I would say number one is like, if you're at the stage of like doing your education, i.e. you're at university or you're at college, you're doing your A levels, then I think it's extremely important to not get too bogged down by like the applications and stuff, because some people, like sometimes, especially at university, especially when you hear loads of people that have like actually secured vacation schemes, it makes you feel like, oh my God, I just need to dedicate all my time to like my vacation scheme applications, when that's not true. Like, I genuinely think that you think about why you're at university. You're there because you need to get the best degree you could possibly get. So I genuinely think you should like prioritize your work, prioritize your degree, whatever degree it is that you're getting, to try and get the best possible grade that you can get. And then obviously do the applications where you can, but just don't put it in priority to like your application. because you still have time even afterwards to like keep doing applications and stuff. And then I would also say, like, just from like even friends and stuff that have like got into the law, that actually a lot more people nowadays are coming in later on in their career, having done other stuff, that they've like done other stuff, whether that might mean that you work for like a bank, it might mean that you work for like in private equity, depends on what type of thing you want to do. Even if like, or you decided that actually I want to just do like entertainment and media, and then you worked for like a startup or something, that is going to be like really good experience as well for like when you actually then make the transition into law. So I wouldn't underestimate all the opportunities that you have at your disposal to try and like broaden out your experience before you then refine yourself down into getting a legal career. And because I think a lot of people actually as well think about like, oh, okay, if I haven't got a training contract, I should really just be a paralegal, which is fine. You can be a paralegal, that's the experience, but there are other stuff that you could do as well, like there's other types of experience that you could do. Like, you know, one of my friends like was in wealth management, and then now she's at a firm that does a lot of like wealth management and private equity work, and they were really interested in her experience that she had in
because
the
it's different to what everyone else has.
Yeah. They knew their clients, one of those things. So it's one of them things where it makes more sense. Try and get more industry experience.
No, I agree. I think it's really easy for people to underestimate the transferable skills they get from non-legal experience, because they think that our law firms are only looking to see that you've worked in a law firm. But any experience you can get in any industry that you're interested in, as long as you can then explain why you're interested in that industry and how it is that experience has benefited you and will benefit this new role, is valuable. So I agree. I don't think we've had any more questions through. So thank you so much, Nicole, for your time. I don't want to keep you too much longer because, like I said, I know you have other work to get back on with, but I really appreciate, and I'm sure everyone in the live really appreciates you taking the time to speak to us.
Thanks for inviting me to speak. I think, I mean, obviously, like, if people have any further questions, they can ask me. I'm always happy to help.
Perfect. What's the best way to contact you then?
Well, I would always say LinkedIn. I don't think but LinkedIn and stuff probably makes the most sense, and that's where I do speak to like people that are like trying to get into the law. But yeah, I mean, obviously, if you want to like DM me first, and then we'll just move it over to LinkedIn, that's more than fine.
Amazing, great. We'll leave it there. Thank you so much again for everyone who's watched. Best of luck with everyone's applications. Bye.
All right, see you later.
Bye.